Greetings, everyone. The Bible is about the over 6,000 years of apostasy away from the ways of Jehovah and to the ways of men, where Satan, the man who brought pain, suffering, and death into this world, Romans 5:12. As a demon, Satan, the antichrist, reigns over the kingdoms of men by claiming to be Jehovah, 2 Thessalonians 2:4, and convincing us that our moral standards are just as good as the moral standards of Jehovah, Genesis 2:17 through 4:12, 2 Thessalonians 2:1 through 11. For Satan to rule over men, the Lord stepped back, hiding his face, power, glory, majesty, love, and Bible, Ezekiel 39:25 through 29. The Lord told us that we would have to patiently endure the suffering of the ways of men until the coming of the Lord. Book of Job, 2 Thessalonians 2:1 through 11, James 5:7 through 11. The Lord's day, the day of salvation, the Lord's Sabbath, the Kingdom of Elohim, the dispensation of grace with every spiritual blessing. That is with the Good Shepherd, the Prince of Peace, the King of Kings reigning over us, the Father of all mercies and comforts, and the great wedding feast. The ways of Elohim, Jehovah, are as high as the heavens above the ways of men, exceeding abundantly greater than we could have ever even imagined. Isaiah 55:9 and following, Ephesians 3:20. All of this is as one day to the Lord, but to men, it is 1,000 years in the kingdom of Jehovah, divided into two ages, Ephesians 2:7. That is the first coming of the Lord that happened in 70 AD, Judas, verse 3, and when the Bible is completed, and when the Bible is restored, the second coming of the Lord in 2065 AD, by the apostasy of the ways of men. So there's two comings of the Lord, divided by the rule of Satan these last 1,680 years. It's going to continue on for 43 more years. Christ is back, and from heaven, he is wielding the sword of the Spirit in these last days of men's moral standards, or Satan's rule over men. Christ is wielding the sword of the Spirit against Satan's megasword, every wind of the doctrine of men, denominationalism, socialism, atheism, fascism, go on and on. Hebrews 1 verse 2, Daniel 12 verse 4, Joel chapter 2, Acts chapter 2, 17 through 21, and all the warnings we have through Scripture about the last days and the end times. Satan is identified as the man of sin. 2 Thessalonians 2:3, that means that Satan has but a short amount of time to reign over this world. So there will be 2 years of pre-Christian spiritual warfare. Right now, that's where we're at right now. The sword of the Spirit's back. We know that Satan's a man of sin, ruling over this world. So we know the second coming of the Lord's at hand. And then there's going to be 40 years of Christianity. That's right. Christian spiritual warfare. That's going to prepare us. We're going to be transforming our minds. We're going to be adding to our faith virtue, knowledge, temperance, patience. We're going to be learning the moral standards of God, preparing us for Christ's rule over this earth in 2065 AD. That's when the sun is going to turn dark and the moon is going to turn red before the great and terrible day of Jehovah. John 12:31-32. I would encourage you, please consider these matters. We need to start preparing for the time that's going to happen. Long before that could happen any time. You know, men predict, and men are not scientists. The weather, space weather is way too complicated for men to understand. But even men have suggested that a Carrington event is overdue. And I think they're right. Any day we could lose our power grids. We need to start preparing. We're getting electric wires ready, for example, so that we have phones in our communities and we can learn and we can communicate to one another in those times of distress. And here we're going to give you a little bit of Ben's warning about these same matters, though he doesn't understand that it's the coming of the Lord.
Good morning, folks. Simple show this morning, but with some key concepts we've got to know. We're having minor M-class flares continuing today, still no shortage of sunspots, and we've got papers on the ongoing changes in the atmosphere and the health impacts of space weather and the changing magnetic field. Let's start with our star, and once more we'll find flashing at the active regions indicating the flare events, but still no Earth-directed CMEs. We are seeing solar wind and geomagnetic conditions die down, but the present sunspot situation demands a vigilant eye on the eruptive activity, especially if any larger flares do occur. Perhaps they can take out some of these UFOs they are seeing around the world. By the way, as we watch the plasma activity in 304 angstroms, it's worth noting that the media blackout on the Ohio chemical spill and quasi-controlled burning is basically a crime against humanity. This could be the worst environmental disaster inside the United States in a long time, and Western Pennsylvania airways and waters of the Ohio River now contain megatoxins. Be safe. First article to hit today details the continuing collapse of density in the upper atmosphere. We are looking at a 12% decrease by the decade, and while they do hypothesize possible ways to blame climate change, this is almost certainly, at least partially, if not wholly, driven by Earth's weakening magnetic field. These are huge, unprecedented changes in the atmosphere and will inevitably reach a peak here in the coming 2 decades as the situation in the magnetic field marches forward. Speaking of Earth's weakening magnetic field, excellent study here on how the drop in the field increases human vulnerability to disease. It's another reason to be as healthy as possible in these times and in the times ahead. And it also speaks on the benefits of grounding yourself and on the dangers of human-caused electromagnetic radiation, 5G, cell phones, etc. 2 very important hits in the journals today on the atmosphere and the ongoing human vulnerability as Earth's magnetic field is shifting. We greatly appreciate your support. Grab your tickets to one of our live events coming up in a couple weeks at the link right below the video in the description box. Subscribe and we'll do this all again tomorrow, right here, but right now at 6 a.m. in the new Valley of the Sun. Eyes open, no fear. Be safe, everyone.